In the movie Mona Lisa Smile, an offbeat college professor played by Julia Roberts arrives on campus in the 1950s, and rumors of her past have people talking, especially a young student played by Maggie Gyllenhaal. Take a look.
For your information, Katherine Watson had to take this job to escape from California.
Please.
She had a torrid affair with a Hollywood movie star. She came here to get away.
That's ridiculous.
Who was it?
I don't know.
Who was it, Giselle? Don't be pitiful. Tell me.
It's ridiculous.
No, it's not. You know something. Tell me.
It's William Holden.
This is your generation.
Please welcome Maggie Gyllenhaal.
Nice to see you.
So great.
Hi, thank you. I come in here.
Hi, Maggie. Welcome to the show. We're glad to have you. Nice to see you.
Hi, nice to see you.
Maggie, this film touches on a very important subject. It takes place in the 1950s, where even women who are getting an education in universities were just expected to have children and get married and start a family. Your character, though, Giselle, defies all of that. Do you think if you were back in the 1950s, do you feel like that would be you? Would you defy all of those expectations?
I think it's hard for me to say. I mean, my grandmother was a doctor, and her sister was a lawyer, and my mother is a screenwriter, and so I feel like I'm a result in some way of what came before me, and it's hard for me to know whether or not the things I feel entitled to come as a result of that or are just intrinsic in me somehow. And I like to think that they're intrinsic in me, and that if I lived in the 50s that I would, you know.
So your grandma and your mom and they didn't go in lockstep with what you say in this film in a way.
Well, I think they did more what Giselle does, what my character does.
Yeah.
I think they
and
felt
what Julia Roberts'
entitled.
character too.
Yeah.
And you gave Giselle such dimension. I have to add, I mean, you really brought her to life. I mean, a lot of people who see this sort of villain seductress, I was just so impressed with how you played that character.
Well, I don't think she is a villain, and I don't even necessarily think she's a seductress. I mean, I think she's...
From the outside, though, one would think, you know,
think
given
she
the script,
thinks.
but you gave her life in a different way.
Well, because, you know, I think it isn't... I think Giselle looks at the people around her who are 18, 19 years old and getting married and thinks that's healthier than playing around a little bit and making some mistakes, but, you know, that's what people do in college.
I read that the part helped you realize your own sexuality.
Well, in some ways. I mean, it coincided with when I made it, I was 24 and turned 25. So I think that's a time when a lot of people have to kind of look at themselves in a new way and say, okay, well, this is what everyone else says is sexy, but how can I, what do I think is sexy? And
What do you think is sexy?
Yeah.
As a young woman?
What do I think is sexy? I think I mean, in some ways, I think some of it is unconscious, but...
Well, who do you think has sex appeal out there?
Who has sex appeal?
Yeah. Julia Roberts.
Yeah,
she's
has
got sex appeal.
Kate Winslet, I think, is sexy. Jenna Rollins, I think, is sexy.
Well, they all have an intelligence too.
I think intelligence is important.
Yeah.
An awareness, a real sense of yourself, not trying to perform yourself or imitate something else, I think is important.
So you know what? You're sexy.
You are sexy.
There you go.
Authenticity is what we're talking about.
Barbara went to Sarah Lawrence, which is...
I heard that.
Yeah, and
Which is an all-girl school, and it was somewhat similar. And Wellesley was my second choice.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
You know, so I
And look at her. She didn't pay attention to the
Of course,
50s.
mine was what. That's
No, she's a slut with Letterman, though. So there you go.
Even now, she continues in
Absolutely.
slut fashion.
So Maggie,
I wish it on you, my dear. I wish it on you.
I was listening to you. You said that I think you said you were 24, 25 when you made it. So that would have been after The Secretary, right?
It was afterwards.
Because that was they call it the breakthrough role. You play this secretary in a sadomasochistic relationship, which is kind of over the top for a young woman. What made that role the breakthrough role, do you think?
Well, it's funny. When I was making it, I was concerned in some ways about the politics of it. I think more before I started making it than when I was actually filming. And so there was a part of me that, you know, I went through every single line in the script with the director to make sure that the very, very fine line that we were walking, you know, that we walked well and that we didn't cross over it. But actually, I think it's the places where I was unconscious and not in my brain that are the moments of that performance that I'm most proud of. I think in some ways I thought that I was more on top of it and knew everything than I did. So I think, I don't know, some kind of innocence or something when I look back on the way I worked on that movie.
It goes back to what we were talking about earlier, authenticity. When you were the most authentic is the time that you really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and I think then you have to find a way to let that into every role that you play, but because that was the first one, I think it almost happened by accident.
Yours is an acting family. Your brother, Jake Gyllenhaal. Any competition between the two of you? He's a very fine actor, you're a very fine actress, so at least you're not competing for roles.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
He was in The Good Girl, right? With Jennifer Aniston.
Yeah. He's, we're brother and sister, so there are times, I guess, when that comes up, although I think the older we get, the more confident we are in ourselves and in what we each want individually.
Would you want to play together in something? Act together?
We did in Donnie Darko, although that was before Secretary, and I had a very small part in that, so there was something a little weird about that, But I think before we do it again, I think I would like to just get a little clearer in my own sense of myself and my autonomy from my family before I work.
Well, you are confident, and you get our vote for sexy. Absolutely wonderful in this film. Our thanks to Maggie Gyllenhaal. Mona Lisa Smile opens December 19th. We'll be right back.